All right now it is time for This Week in the Lakeville Journal. We go to the center studio. Let me put Ann's mic up and give you some feedback and say, good morning, all.
Good morning. It's like the stateroom scene in the Marx Brothers movie.
Well, it could be. It also could be an editorial meeting of the Lakeville Journal.
That's right. It's too orderly and well-behaved.
Can I say thank you for turning the radio station to a Marx Brothers movie?
Now
and another dozen eggs.
Now we also, I'm pretty sure the interns are there, are Gabrielle and Shane.
Yep. Good morning.
Good morning, because I didn't hear them chime in. Good morning.
And I'd like to say we don't actually have a ton by Gabrielle in this week's issue, but she's been very busy working, and we have health stories coming up, and she's contributing a lot to Discover the Canaans, which is our special supplement coming out in mid-August.
Okay. All right. Janet, are you there as well?
Good morning. Yeah.
There it is.
All right.
So now it's definitely a full house. All right. Well, let's go right to the front page of the paper. And it's an interesting story by Lila Hawken, mystery microcells sighted in Cornwall.
So they were having this big forum where they were explaining the difference between 5G and fiber optic and how they work together and how they don't work together because everybody's concerned about it. The governor has said he wants every town in the state to get it, unless, of course, they don't want it, in which case they won't get high-speed internet. But it's been an interesting exercise in conflicting desires where people keep saying, we really need to have high-speed internet or these towns are going to languish, nobody's going to want to move here. And at the same time, every time they talk about getting high-speed internet here, they're like, no, it's got too many health effects. So they were trying to balance and weigh the positives and negatives of this. And then in the conversation about the conceptual parts of this, somebody said that all these, what looks like the 5G cells are starting to appear on some of the highways around town, which even if it's a state-owned road, they still have to ask the town for permission. So there's some consternation about that. I feel like I've seen some popping up like on 112 near Hotchkiss. So we'll see who owns those and whether they remain and whether your service is actually better because as we know, Hotchkiss is a notorious dead spot.
Well, here's the interesting thing about those boxes. Now, you have to remember, there's boxes that are up on that go up. The ones that have red lights and green lights, they are battery backups.
Right.
The ones that have, potentially the ones that have red lights, are microcells that hook via through the telephone line. I don't think they're the 5G technology type, but still, it's illegal to hang them without permission from the state.
It'd be very exciting if somebody actually thought that we were worth hanging the boxes because we get so neglected on so many technologies up here.
So it'll be an interesting thing to follow, but we'll see what happens. I'm not a big supporter of 5G when I found out that the difference are satellites, all the National Weather Service satellites that look down, the 5G data looks a lot like rain in radars. And there's a big confusion now going on with the National Weather Service as to what is actually rain and what is the 5G cell.
Bad.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So it's an interesting technology. We'll see what happens with it. Well, you've got the picture there. Salisbury joins the world in the anti-ice vigil. There was one in Kent. We tried to supply sound for the one in Salisbury, but of course there was no power for them, so they used a good old-fashioned bullhorn.
Yeah, these things always come up in a sort of an ad hoc way. So I was actually out of town, and Ann Day and Alexander Wilburn nicely went and covered the one in Salisbury. And, people sort of stepping out and really saying they do not support what's happening with immigration changes. And the president doesn't seem to be listening, but we'll just keep trying.
All right. Below that, and it's funny because I had an interview 2 weeks ago, and I've been running it for a couple of weeks with some of the members of the people opposing Cricket Valley, and it didn't matter to them that the states promised to monitor the quality of the air from Cricket Valley. They just are dead set against it. But I think it's a good first step, anyways, for us folks around here.
Well, in a way, and I think that this Western Connecticut Clean Air Group, which is focused mostly in Kent and Sherman, I think that they have a pretty good realistic sense that they can't make the state deconstruct this giant power plant that's now been built. So what they're really concerned about, or what they're focusing their energy on, is asking for high-quality ear monitoring. And they've been asking for months now, and the idea is to try and get these monitors up and running before the plant goes into operation, which is going to happen pretty soon, so that they can get a baseline reading. So I think there's definitely one in Mohawk Mountain that's already working. I think there's one at South or in at the Kent school that's working. So we'll see. And but as you said, the state keeps saying we're monitoring it, we're watching it, and people keep saying, why can't you monitor it? And yet we don't trust what you're saying. So it's another one of these things like with the 5G where there's a lot of conflicting emotion.
Yeah, and one of those monitors is going in Sharon, by the way. The Board of Selectmen voted on that a while ago. They spent the $5,000. So
Yep.
Sharon has joined the list there. A nice picture of Maria Horn there and Skip Barber. We had the forum about just asking questions. And it was kind of like Jeopardy. I had to keep insisting that some of the people just ask questions. But, a lot of interesting things were said by Skip Barber at that meeting.
Yeah, and it's a shame that people don't listen more to what he's saying. And I understand that this is complex and that the future is unknown once he sells the track. But it does feel like if people have the opportunity to ask him questions, that they should do so and really try to get to the bottom of it instead of, as you said, just representing their concerns about it.
One of the major things he said was when he was asked, are you selling the track? And he said, of course I am. Well,
He's 83.
I'm 80-some years old. Of course I am.
Yeah.
And he was very honest. He's got two very interested suitors, one local, one not local. And he was, one thing I found out, the questions that were sent at him, he answered or tried to answer and didn't hide from anything. So I think the more that people ask the questions of Skip Barber when they hear a rumor, he'll respond.
And the sense that we get is Skip does want to talk to people in the community and say, like, this is our moment. Let's figure out what we all want to do together. And I think he's been disappointed that the response he gets is largely a cold shoulder.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with that, but I give him a lot of credit for facing those for those people. Nice story by Caitlin once again on remembering Robert Sadlon from the movie house.
Right, and of course Robert and Carol Sadlon have done so much for the town of Millerton, including but not just limited to the beautiful renovation of the movie house, which is considered a leading art house theater across America. Robert had brain cancer. I believe he had a glioblastoma and died in May. And the memorial service was July 13th. My daughter was there, and she said every seat was full in the theater and just wonderful reminiscences of him.
All right, nice story. I was at this meeting and videotaped it where they extended Pam Vogel's contract. And the interesting thing about this, and it makes me feel just a tiny bit better about it, is that the next 2 years of her contract will be negotiated annually. So what she has signed to be on, she does not get the 2.7% increase every year. They will look at this annually.
Right.
That makes me feel a little bit better because it's not one of these contracts that they're going to have for 3 years and then 1 year in negotiate it. They're going to look at it annually.
Right, because your objection had always been that they were rolling, that the contract kept rolling and they would just keep rubber stamping it every year.
So if they want to look at it annually, I have no problem with the annual option. I really don't. But I just had that, why sign a 3-year contract and then renegotiate it after 1 year? That always used to drive me crazy.
Yeah.
We want to go to the History Notebook with Bernie Drew, the Drive-Up Theater.
Right. We're all used to this idea of nostalgically the theater that you drive into with your car and you watch a movie. So he talks about a car that had a projector on its back. And speaking of funky, weird cars, let's go to look at the our town's page. Falls Village, once again, overrun to the point where Alex Wilburn, one of our editors who lives in Falls Village, said he just got up early in the morning, drove his car to our office, parked it, and walked back because he knew he'd be unable to get out of his driveway for the rest of the day. It was so crowded, so many cars, so many people, vendors, music, fun, everything. That's really turned into a gigantic destination draw.
And when I was there, I interviewed Denny Jacobs, and they only had 600 registrants this year, and about 100 other people showed up, like my brother, just to put their cars on display. But he cut down the number of places he advertised because last year they had close to 900 cars, and it was just too much. But this year, they had parking areas all set out. They had buses back and forth. They had and it ran much better, and it's just all you can say is it's a simply amazing event.
Yeah, it's just so unexpected, like what succeeds and what doesn't. But Denny Jacobs and Judy Jacobs put this on originally as a fundraiser, I think, for the Historical Society.
No, it was for the anniversary of the Jacobs Garage 10 years ago.
Oh, right.
It was the 50th anniversary.
It was the 50th, so this made it the 60th.
And Judy, after it was over, Judy said, we're not going to do this again. It was so much work. But people wanted it. And so Toy Makers, Jacobs Garage, and the fire department got together and
it turned into this just magic.
It's magical.
Magic
yeah.
event, yep. Speaking about magic, and it's kind of cool when local businesses step forward. Salisbury Bank awarded more student scholarships, $1,500 in assistance, which nowadays every dollar counts.
Right, and there's some incredible scholarships, and of course this is the time of year. It's actually sort of late. We usually get them in spring as the school year ends, but yes, thank you to all our local organizations for supporting education.
And the Marvelwood teacher was named as a summer scholar.
Yeah, he's very interesting. He was my daughter's teacher. He's Russian and really smart, really interesting, great guy.
Did he vote for Trump? No, okay.
I don't think so. I bet not. I bet that's why he's here.
He's written for us a column, so you can look back, look him up, and see what his opinions are.
All right. I love the honor for state that gave to Ed Kirby.
Yeah, what an amazing guy.
Amazing guy. I mean, he was a baseball icon, a sports guy, teacher, principal of Housatonic Valley Regional High School, still actively involved Sharon Historical Society. Absolutely. Both he and Barkley are amazing, amazing Sharon residents.
Barkley Prindle, of course, two longtime Sharon guys, and there's nothing more fun in my years as a reporter than having had the opportunity to ride around with Ed in his Jeep and have him take you around and tell you, like, oh, there used to be a sawmill over here and there used to be this. He was the one that first told me about the Cedars, the incredible resort, world-class resort that was in Lakeville, and there's nothing left of it. And if anybody other than Ed told you about it, you'd be like, really? Really? But, of course, Ed knows all, so he was honored by the state. A lot of Maria Horn in this issue. She's been everywhere, super actively reaching out to her constituents, and so she presented this award to Ed.
All right, and Patrick Sullivan has a story on the second hearing on the multi-unit housing.
Right, which is complex, and what is said in the meetings isn't completely what the goal is, which I think a lot of this is about that Chinese restaurant in Lakeville that everybody's so upset about. So they've had 2 hearings now. They've tried to schedule them so that weekenders can come and that town people can come. They've closed the hearings. They're going to now deliberate. And Michael sort of cryptically said, well, you'll just have to watch the website and find out when we're meeting and when it's on the agenda to find out how this goes.
All right. And a story out of North Canaan where a medical center is looking for space.
Yeah, Leela Hawken again at the North Canaan meeting and looking at bringing sort of a Winstead-style medical center here, which would be great because, Anne and I lost our favorite doctor, Bruce Ginelli. We're very sad about that. We need a new doctor.
All right, and I'm in contact with Brent Colley almost on a daily basis.
I bet you are.
On this Town Green project, where they're really trying to make sure that as they add the drains and refix the green up, that they don't ruin water delivery to everybody else. It's a very touch and go thing because there's no maps of the mains. They have to actually map them out by metal detectors and things like that. So
those mains are so ancient.
I know it's amazing how old they are.
So they're redoing the Sharon Green. That's what all that machinery is doing out there and all those giant pipes. So as you drive through and you're wondering, like, what the heck is that? They're redoing the Sharon Green.
And then once again, another story on the hub in North Canaan.
Shane, take it away.
That's right. So finally, some much-needed energy is being brought to downtown North Canaan through this hub, which is a collaborative business center and a space for local businesses and nonprofits. That was spearheaded by Selectman Christian Allen and student intern Victor Flores. It's located in what was formerly the Colonial Theater on Railroad Street. And this seems to be following a trend. There are hubs popping up in Norfolk as well as Cornwall, and this started back in May, and their 3-month grant runs through August, so they are hoping to secure more permanent funding.
All right. I want to move over because I talked about this after Rip passed away, but the obituary that you post really is just a snapshot on what an incredible career the man really did have.
And it does sort of talk about how he went from being in these roles where he was kind of menacing to being in these roles where he was very funny. But I was in Seattle when he passed away, and I think within 24 hours of his passing, it was in the national newspapers.
Oh, it was amazing, and he had like 4 different generations of people, and they saw 4 different Rip Torns on the screen and on stage.
Yeah, and
really.
Of course for people around here, he was just Rip. A very down-to-earth local guy. Most often you'd see him in jeans with suspenders and a big bushy beard. It was sometimes hard to reconcile that with the neatly dressed and groomed person you would see in the movies. And our condolences to his wife, Amy, and his children. leading Claire, who was my daughter's friend.
You know, you look at the later stages of his career, he was still the Larry Sanders Show, Defending Your Life, and then, of course, the Men in Black movies. I mean,
Right, and lived a very simple life.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, a week of Kent songs, artwork, and community.
These were 3 stories, and we didn't have room for all of them. It was just so much going on in Kent last week. Very lively. The Second Saturdays is continuing through the summer, and they have art shows, and definitely plan a day down there.
And continuity and change, North Canaan Railroad Days, it started this week.
Yeah, so the 55th Annual Railroad Days, of course, runs from the 17th to the 28th, so it started yesterday. And I was flipping back through the Lakeville Journal archives, which you can find on the Scoville Library website, and found some interesting anecdotes. In 1969, for example, there was a diaper derby where they would basically race, infants. Of course, that's not an event they have anymore.
DFC stepping in.
And then 2 years later, in 71, there was a very interesting environmental film series that was shown at the Depot, put on by Tom Zetterstrom, a longtime North Canaan resident who's done much, in terms of planting trees and environmentalism throughout the town. And some interesting and provocative films on nature and man's sort of destruction of it.
Now, if you look back and you've got to look closely, 2 of my favorite things that are, one's still there, kind of, one isn't there. For 2 or 3 years, they had ambulance squads pull out the stretchers and have somebody on the stretcher and had ambulance races. But after multiple crashes over the first couple of years, they decided to stop that.
At least there was an ambulance.
They still do the
involved.
ping pong ball drop, but when they originally did the ping pong ball drop, I was there broadcasting for all these things. They dropped it from an airplane, and the kids were running around following the airplane in the sky. And when they dropped the balls, of course, from where the airplane was, the wind blew them, and it blew them, most of them, across the street to McDonald's. But the kids who were running to get the balls didn't see that. They were looking up, and they all ran into the fence. So they had to change the way they dropped the balls. But you're right. That's a great story. There's been a lot of different things that have come and gone and been refined at Canaan Railroad Days.
Was that WKRP?
It really was. It was an amazing. It's always been an amazing event, really, and I'm always proud to be up there each year for the Canaan Fire Department parade on the last weekend. You've got a great story on the sports page. 2 locals you can't beat playing ball for a living.
Yeah, that's right. 2 Northwest Corner residents, kids that grew up here, Willie Yon and Wills Montgomery. Willie went to Housatonic, where I go, and I can attest that he is something of a legend, as he should be. And Montgomery, who graduated from the Salisbury Boys School. And they are both playing professional baseball. Willie in the Baltimore Orioles organization. He was recently promoted to AA with the Bay Sox, and Montgomery is playing in High A, and they're doing very well. Willie made the was hitting 280 in the Eastern League, and of course they both attended UConn. And making Northwest Corner proud.
We have a Seth Rayner designed golf course at Hotchkiss, and it's great that you've got the story here about the little gym they have up in Norfolk, because that is also a classic old-time course.
Beautiful old course, really sweet little clubhouse, and great tennis courts, too.
All right, let us go on to the opinion page. Fraud is rampant, even in the Northwest Corner. No, don't say that, Jan.
Yeah, how can that be? Well, we, hear about incidents of fraud through covering the police blotter as well as through talking to our readers. And we had it happen to us last week where our checking account was hacked, and we found, we tell the story here, so I will let people read it and share with us their stories if they would like to. We feel strongly that it's important to understand what is going on and how it happens so we can be better prepared. When we reported it to Troop B, the trooper said that, boy, we get complaints like this about once a day here in the Northwest Corner. So, and this, is a pretty small area with a pretty small population. So all of us have heard about it from friends and family, and when it hits home, it takes over your life for a while. So do be aware of what you can do to combat it. And we know that the banks in the area especially and other organizations hold seminars to prepare you to deal with it and prevent it, but, take it seriously.
All right, now I want you folks to look at the Peter Steiner cartoon, and you have to look at it and think very, very, very seriously about what it says. But it's very funny, and I think the underlying meaning of that cartoon is pretty significant.
Well, as with so many of Peter's cartoons, funny and very serious. So, yes, look at it and think about what's happening in our country now as he tries to make us do every week, and all our columnists do. We have Dick Ollis, we have Chris Powell. Lisa Wright is writing guest commentary for us. You know her from Oblong Books in Millerton, where she's worked for more than 35 years. Very important issue she's writing about, taking responsibility for babies. And Mary Close Oppenheimer on affordable housing, Tony Peel on Belling the Cat.
And lots of letters, whether it be from Cornwall, a Banana Republic, or the septic problem in Cornwall. And turning back the pages, once again, is one of my favorite segments of the paper. Right, which we're glad that Norma Goulet puts together for us every week. And do read Jeffrey Lloyd's letter on vindication being worth the cost in Salisbury in the investigation of the former recreation director there. Todd Piker, who's the chair of the West Cornwall Water Septic Committee, comments on the septic system issue there, as does Ed Furman. All right. Ann?
Hello.
Are you ready to go to Compass?
I'm ready. No one in this area can complain that there's not enough to do around here in the summer. And I went to the Canaan Carnival last night. Sorry to say it was rained out, so I have nothing to report about that. But we do have some great reviews in this week's Compass. We have it seems like every human being on the planet is watching the third season of Stranger Things. Sorry to say I'm not one of them, but I have a young writer, Sophia Kaufman, who's always very plugged into what's interesting to her generation, and actually my husband's watching it also, but she gives you a very good review of what's happening on Stranger Things. I have a review and interview with Courtney Baum, who's a writer from Norfolk. She runs a writer's colony over there, and her book, just want to pat ourselves on the back because the New York Times reviewed her book 2 days ago, and so it is kind of a hot book right now. She's just started her book tour. She'll be at the White Hart on Tuesday. It's an interesting story that's based on the story of Peggy Guggenheim and her daughter Pegine, and their kind of complicated and fraught relationship. It's told from the point of view of a 15-year-old Pegine, but the characters, thankfully, have different names, so it's fiction. We also have Fred Baumgarten giving a sum up of what's happening at Jacob's Pillow this summer. We have Peter Steiner has a wonderful art show at the Sharon Library, the Hotchkiss Library in Sharon. And as we all know, he's a great cartoonist for the Lakeville Journal. He's an author of detective novels, and this is a wonderful show of his paintings. So he's really quite talented in many aspects. The show is up through August 31st, so don't miss it. We have a review of a play called The Alan Freed Story, Rock and Roll Man, which is at the Colonial Theater, part of the Berkshire Theater Group, who they just seem to be nonstop. They've got so much stuff going on up there. 3 theaters. They're constantly coming up with amazing plays and entertainment stuff. And then we have the entire schedule of railroad days here in Compass this week, so you can see what's going on. And how many more more seconds
You
do I
have about a minute left, actually.
Oh, a minute. Oh, wow. Okay, what else have I not talked about?
Well, we have a great Cornwall page, that tells you about what's to do in Cornwall, some of the businesses there, and makes the case for taking a visit over to the Cornwalls.
There's a lot happening at the Little Guild for you animal lovers out there. And then we have Tri-Corner Calendar. And don't forget that tomorrow night is the first night, or is it? Yeah, Friday night is the first night of Beauty and the Beast at the Sharon Playhouse.
And they're already about 35 to 40% sold out for that first night show, which is spectacular for this area.
I'll bet they're about 60% by now, Marshall, because you gave them a good plug, and I'm giving them a good plug. Everybody, I mean, they've had an amazing season, and last year was fantastic also. They've learned to do plays that everybody loves.
How to turn around a theater in a year and a half. Congratulations to those guys.
I agree. And who doesn't love Beauty and the Beast? It's got some of the greatest songs ever. Let's see, what else is going on?
Don't need anything else. We're done.
Okay, thanks.
A minute's a fast thing.
Guys, gals, thanks for all coming in.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
That is This Week in the Lakeville Journal. Of course, you can find the Lakeville Journal at tricornernews.com, tricornernews.com, also on your newsstand, and they offer home delivery as well.